Oh. Why, hello there, and welcome to Frank Reads. I am Frank Hasenmuller, and I've been reading some of my favorite stories lately, and I thought I'd share them with you. I enjoy them, and I hope you will too. Today we're reading part 2 of A Scandal in Bohemia, one of the most popular Sherlock Holmes stories ever written, and it was written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who created the character. I do urge you to watch part 1 before you watch part 2. And if you have seen part 1, you will remember that it ended with a mysterious visitor knocking on Sherlock Holmes' door. Now, let's join Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson as we find out who this mysterious visitor really is. A slow and heavy step, which had been heard upon the stairs and in the passage, paused immediately outside the door. Then there was a loud and authoritative tap. "Come in," said Holmes. A man entered who could hardly have been less than 6 feet 6 inches in height, with the chest and limbs of a Hercules. His dress was rich with a richness which would, in England, be looked upon as akin to bad taste. Heavy bands of ostrachan were slashed across the sleeves and fronts of his double-breasted coat, while the deep blue cloak, which was thrown over his shoulders, was lined with flame-colored silk and secured at the neck with a brooch which consisted of a single flaming barrel. Boots which extended halfway up his calves, and which were trimmed at the tops with a rich brown fur, completed the impression of barbaric opulence, which was suggested by his whole appearance. He carried a broad-brimmed hat in his hand, while he wore across the upper part of his face, extending down past the cheekbones, a black vizard mask, which he had apparently adjusted at that very moment, for his hand was still raised to it as he entered. From the lower part of his face he appeared to be a man of strong character, with a thick, hanging lip and a long, straight chin, suggestive of resolution, pushed to the length of obstinacy. "You had my note?" he asked with a deep, harsh voice and a strongly marked German accent. "I told you that I would call." He looked from one to the other of us, as if uncertain which to address. "Pray take a seat," said Holmes. "This is my friend and colleague, Dr. Watson, who is occasionally good enough to help me in my cases. Whom have I the honor to address?" "You may address me as the Count von Kram, a Bohemian nobleman. I understand that this gentleman, your friend, is a man of honor and discretion, whom I may trust with a matter of the most extreme importance. If not, I should much prefer to communicate with you alone." I rose to go, but Holmes caught me by the wrist and pushed me back into my chair. "It is both or none," said he. "You may say before this gentleman anything which you may say to me." The Count shrugged his broad shoulders. "Then I must begin," said he, "by binding you both to absolute secrecy for 2 years. At the end of that time the matter will be of no importance. At present it is not too much to say that it is of such weight that it may have an influence upon European history." "I promise," said Holmes. "And I." "You will excuse this mask," continued our strange visitor. "The august person who employs me wishes his agent to be unknown to you. And I may confess at once that the title by which I just call myself is not exactly mine own." "I was aware of it," said Holmes dryly. "The circumstances are of great delicacy, and every precaution has to be taken to quench what might grow to be an immense scandal, and seriously compromise one of the reigning families of Europe. To speak plainly, the matter implicates the great house of Ormstein, hereditary kings of Bohemia." "I was also aware of that," murmured Holmes, setting himself down in his armchair and closing his eyes. Our visitor glanced with some apparent surprise at the languid, lounging figure of the man who had been, no doubt, depicted to him as the most incisive reasoner and most energetic agent in Europe. Holmes slowly reopened his eyes and looked impatiently at his gigantic client. "If your Majesty would condescend to state your case," he remarked, "I should be better able to advise you." The man sprang from his chair and paced up and down the room in uncontrollable agitation. Then, with a gesture of desperation, he tore the mask from his face and hurled it upon the ground. "You are right," he cried. "I am the king. Why should I attempt to conceal it?" "Why, indeed?" murmured Holmes. "Your Majesty had not spoken before I was aware that I was addressing Wilhelm Gottsreich Sigmundson von Ormstein, Grand Duke of Cassel-Fallstein, and hereditary King of Bohemia." "But you can understand," said our strange visitor, sitting down once more and passing his hand over his high white forehead. "You can understand that I am not accustomed to doing such business in mine own person. Yet the matter was so delicate that I could not confide it to an agent without putting myself in his power. I have come incognito from Prague for the purpose of consulting you." "Then pray consult," said Holmes, shutting his eyes once more. "The facts are briefly these. Some 5 years ago, during a lengthy visit to Warsaw, I made the acquaintance of the well-known adventuress Irina Adler. The name is no doubt familiar to you." "Kindly look her up in my index, Doctor," murmured Holmes without opening his eyes. For many years he had adopted a system of docketing all paragraphs concerning men and things, so that it was difficult to name a subject or a person on which he could not at once furnish information. In this case, I found her biography sandwiched in between that of a Hebrew rabbi and that of a staff commander who had written a monograph upon the deep-sea fishes. "Let me see," said Holmes. Born in New Jersey in the year 1858. Contralto, La Scala, Prima donna, Imperial Opera of Warsaw, yes. Retired from operatic stage, ha! Living in London, quite so. Your Majesty, as I understand, became entangled with this young person, wrote her some compromising letters, and is now desirous of getting those letters back." "Precisely so, but how?" "Was there a secret marriage?" "None." "No legal papers or certificates?" "None." "Then I fail to follow, Your Majesty. If this young person should produce her letters for blackmailing or other purposes, how is she to prove their authenticity?" "There is the writing." "Pooh-pooh, forgery." "My private notepaper." "Stolen." "My own seal." "Imitated." "My photograph." "Bought." "We were both in the photograph." "Oh dear, that is very bad. Your Majesty has indeed committed an indiscretion." "I was mad, insane." "You have compromised yourself seriously." "I was only crown prince then. I was young. I am but 30 now." "It must be recovered." "We have tried and failed." "Your Majesty must pay. It must be bought." "She will not sell." "Stolen, then?" 5 attempts have been made. Twice burglars in my pay ransacked her house. Once we diverted her luggage when she traveled. Twice she has been waylaid. There has been no result." "No sign of it?" "Absolutely none." Holmes laughed. "It is quite a pretty little problem," said he. "But a very serious one to me," returned the king reproachfully. "Very indeed. And what does she propose to do with the photograph?" "To ruin me." "But how?"
"I am to be married."
"So I have heard."
"To Clotilde Lothman von Saxe-Meiningen, second daughter of the King of Scandinavia. You may know the strict principles of her family. She herself is the very soul of delicacy. A shadow of doubt as to my conduct would bring the matter to an end."
"And Irina Adler?"
"Threatens to send them the photograph, and she will do it. I know that she will do it. You do not know her, but she has a soul of steel. She has the face of the most beautiful of women, and the mind of the most resolute of men. Rather than I should marry another woman, there are no links to which she would not go, none."
"You are sure she has not sent it yet?"
"I am sure."
"And why?"
"Because she said that she would send it on the day when the betrothal was publicly proclaimed. That will be next Monday."
"Oh, then we have..." 3 days yet, said Holmes with a yawn. That is very fortunate, as I have one or two matters of importance to look into just at present. Your Majesty will, of course, stay in London for the present?
Certainly. You will find me at the Langham under the name of the Count von Kram.
Then I shall drop you a line to let you know how we progress.
Pray do so. I shall be all anxiety.
Then, as to money.
You have carte blanche.
Absolutely.
I tell you that I would give up one of the provinces of my kingdom to have that photograph.
And for present expenses.
The king took a heavy chamois leather bag from under his cloak and laid it on the table. There are 300 pounds in gold and 700 in notes, he said. Holmes scribbled a receipt upon a sheet of his notebook and handed it to him.
And Mademoiselle's address?
He asked. It's Briery Lodge, 17th Avenue, St. John's Wood.
Holmes took a note of it. One other question, said he. Was the photograph a cabinet?
It was.
Then good night, Your Majesty, and I trust that we shall soon have some good news for you. And good night, Watson, he added, as the wheels of the Royal Brougham rolled down the street. If you will be good enough to call tomorrow at 3 o'clock, I should like to chat this little matter over with you. And so ends part 2 of A Scandal in Bohemia. It's a little different because it's less about Sherlock Holmes trying to solve a mystery and more about him trying to retrieve an object. But we do have to ask ourselves, is he going to succeed in that goal? And how exactly does Irina Adler become, in Holmes's eyes, the woman? Let's find out next time when I read part 3 of A Scandal in Bohemia. I hope you will join me. And until then, keep reading.